Hello everybody, Dunkusha here. Welcome to another episode of Don't Disney Movie Reviews. As you know from watching my last review, I'm continuing my review of the Fantasia movies. Originally, the first Fantasia was intended to be an ever-evolving feature where during every re-release, it would have new segments replacing the old ones. But because the movie flopped at the box office, that idea was dropped. However, over the years, Fantasia became more popular and they decided to make a sequel, which happens to be what I'm reviewing today. Released on December 17th, 1999, the movie is Fantasia 2000. The first segment is Symphony Number 5 by Ludwig van Beethoven. This segment features abstract patterns that resemble butterflies, two of which, a mother and a baby, who are flying with many other butterflies exploring the world of light. Then in the world of darkness, the butterflies are chased by black bats and the mother has her baby go on. Soon enough, the world is conquered by light and color. The next segment is Pines of Rome by Ottorino Respighi, which is about a family of humpback whales that can fly during a supernova. At one point, the baby whale gets separated from its parents when he gets trapped in an iceberg. He then sees his mother outside and she helps him find his way out. The baby whale reunites with its parents. They then join a huge pod of whales which fly and frolic through the clouds and into outer space. Next comes Rhapsody in Blue by George Gershwin, which is set in New York City in the 1930s and drawn in the style of Al Hirschfeld's caricatures of the time. This segment follows four people who want a better life. First, there's a construction worker named Duke who gets up late for work. He's a construction worker, but he dreams to become a jazz drummer. Then there's a man named Joe who's down on his luck because he doesn't have a job. At the Goldberg Hotel, a little girl named Rachel leads with her governess as her parents go to work, and a rich man named John goes shopping with his strict wife Margaret. Rachel's governess takes her to a bunch of classes such as ballet, singing, swimming, art, gymnastics, tennis, and piano, but she's not good at any of them. Meanwhile, John goes to a store with Margaret and she buys a lot of stuff for her dog. Towards the end of the segment, Duke quits his job as a construction worker, allowing Joe to replace him, giving him a job. Rachel goes after her ball in the street and her parents save her. Joe hoists Margaret on a hook, allowing John to do whatever he wants. Next up is Piano Concerto No. 2, Allegro Opus 102 by Dmitri Shostakovich, telling the story of the Steadfast Tin Soldier by Hans Christian Andersen. In the bedroom of a toy collector, a ballerina and a jack-in-the-box come to life at night, and the jack-in-the-box wants the ballerina to date him, but she refuses. An army of toy soldiers then comes to life, and one of them, who was only made with one leg, falls in love with the ballerina, who at first he thinks only has one leg as well. However, he then sees that she has two legs and it makes him sad. She then begins to return his affections and it makes him happy again. However, the Jack in the Box isn't happy with the tin soldier and tries to get rid of him. He manages to knock the soldier out a window by throwing a toy boat at him. The soldier then goes down a storm drain and into the sewers. The soldier then ends up in the ocean where he's swallowed by a big fish. Back in the toy collector's room, the Jack in the Box once again tries to get the ballerina to date him, but she still refuses. Later, the fish that swallowed the soldier is delivered to the toy collector's house. He finds the soldier and puts it back with the rest. Later that night, the toys come to life again and the soldier fights the Jack in the Box. The next segment is the Carnival of the Animals finale by Camille Saint-Saëns, where a group of flamingos is doing their routine while a slapstick member is playing with a yo-yo. The others try to get him into the routine as well, but he's not interested. In the end, the other flamingos get the yo-yo stuck in a tree, but then the slapstick member emerges with a bunch of yo-yos. Next up is The Sorcerer's Apprentice by Paul Dukas from the first Fantasia, and here is a quick recap of it. Mickey Mouse is Sorcerer Yensid's apprentice, carrying buckets of water to fill a cauldron, while Yensid does sorcery. Yensid then takes a break from sorcery, leaves his hat on the table, and leaves the room. Mickey then uses the hat to bring a broomstick to life and has it carry the buckets of water for him so he can take a break. Mickey then falls asleep and dreams about doing sorcery, but then wakes up to find the broom flooding the place and can't stop it. So he chops it down with an axe, which only causes it to multiply, so now many brooms are flooding the place. Yensid soon returns after hearing the commotion, puts a stop to it, and isn't happy with Mickey for using his hat. Mickey then gives the hat and broom back to Yensid and goes back to carrying the buckets of water himself. After The Sorcerer's Apprentice comes Pomp and Circumstance, Marches 1, 2, 3, and 4 by Edward Elgar, which tells the story of Noah's Ark with Donald Duck as Noah's assistant. Once it starts raining, Donald tries to get the animals to get into the ark. They refuse at first, but then do so. On the ark, Donald realizes that Daisy's missing, so he goes out to look for her as she gets on, but then the flood comes in and Donald gets back on, and he and Daisy both believe that each other's gone. Once the rain is over, the animals are let outside and Donald's still mourning over Daisy while Daisy's mourning over Donald. The water then recedes, the animals step out of the ark and into the world, and Donald and Daisy reunite. The final segment of the movie is the Firebird Suite 1919 version by Igor Stravinsky, where in a valley at the end of winter, an elk enters a cave and awakens a spring sprite. The sprite begins changing winter into spring. She then arrives at a mountain where nothing grows. She goes to the top, seeing that it's a dormant volcano with a mysterious shape in the center, and suddenly... The Firebird awakens and destroys everything in sight. After a while, the elk wanders through the destroyed valley and wakes up the sprite again. The elk encourages the sprite to revive the valley, so she does, and it now looks better than it ever did before. And that was Fantasia 2000. What are my thoughts on it? I loved it. It's a great sequel to the original, but just like the original, it bombed. On a budget of between $80 million and $85 million, the movie made a total of $90.8 million worldwide and got really good reviews from critics. Now let's move on to the production of the film. To recap what I said earlier, Fantasia was supposed to be an ever-evolving feature with new segments replacing the old ones during each re-release. But it never happened because it bombed. Then in the early 1980s, Mel Shaw was working on a Fantasia sequel called Musicana, which would tell stories from all around the world. But it never came to be. Then in the early 1990s, Fantasia was released on VHS and was a huge success. So Roy E. Disney wrote then Disney CEO Michael Eisner a note about making a Fantasia sequel, to which Eisner agreed, and they would use the profits from the Fantasia VHS sales to fund the sequel, which at the time was called Fantasia Continued. When looking for a conductor, they needed one who had equal stature as Leopold Stokowski. So Roy, along with Tom Schumacher, visited the Metropolitan Opera in New York City, where they met its conductor James Levine. They asked him and he immediately said yes, and during the production he was described as a kid in a candy store with all the music he could play with. Roy would then go on to hire Donald W. Ernst as a producer, and Roy himself was enlisted as executive producer. When Roy started on the project, he wanted to include half of the original movie and just add 3 or 4 new segments, but it didn't work out. The Sorcerer's Apprentice, The Nutcracker Suite, and Dance of the Hours were all supposed to be in the film, but then Dance of the Hours was removed and The Nutcracker Suite was replaced by one of the new segments. making The Sorcerer's Apprentice the only segment to remain from the first movie. For the interstitials, Don Hahn was hired to direct them. As for the hosts, they went with a bunch instead of just one like in the original, including in the order of their appearances. Steve Martin, Itzhak Perlman, Quincy Jones, Bette Midler, James Earl Jones, Penn Teller, James Levine with Mickey Mouse, and Angela Lansbury. When creating Symphony No. 5, it was chosen because its first four notes were very similar to people around the world. As for the animation, director Pashot Hunt spent 2 years starting in 1997 to figure out how to depict a fight of good versus evil and how to resolve it. The backgrounds were made by hand and so were the layouts, while the personality animation was done traditionally and used to guide the CGI department. When making Pines of Rome, it was the first piece Roy suggested to be in the movie as well as the first one animated. During a meeting, while an artist was drawing clouds, director Hendel Batoy saw that one of the clouds was shaped like a whale and the idea stuck since. For the animation, the whales were supposed to be hand-drawn, but when they were scanned into the cap system, Patel didn't think that their weight and movements were believable enough, so they animated them with CGI instead to make them more believable while the eyes were still hand-drawn. They even used the same technique which was used to make the wildebeest stampede from The Lion King to make it so that the whales wouldn't bump into each other. For Rhapsody in Blue, it originated in 1995 when director Eric Goldberg went to Al Hirschfeld and talked to him about making an animated short set to George Gershwin's music and drawn in Hirschfeld's illustrations. He then pitched it to Schumacher and it was greenlit. It was going to be its own separate project, but then they decided to put it in the movie and it would replace the Nutcracker Suite from the first Fantasia. When making Piano Concerto No. 2, Walt Disney originally wanted to make a compilation film with Hans Christian Andersen stories, which was where they first tried to create The Little Mermaid. Then one day years later, Roy came in with the Shostakovich music and wanted to use it in Fantasia Continued. But Toy then found a book of the Steadfast Tin Soldier, and when flipping through the pages, they decided it would fit with the piece. When doing the animation, it was the first time Disney used CGI to make the characters in their entirety. This was even before Pixar made Toy Story. For the designs of the characters, the Tin Soldier and the Ballerina stayed true to their original designs, while the Jack-in-the-Box was a challenge for the animators. As for the ending, it originally had the soldier and the ballerina melt in the fire, but it was changed into a happier ending because of the ending of the piece. When making the Carnival of the Animals finale, it was directed by Eric Goldberg again, while his wife Susan served as the art director. As for the story, Joe Grant, who worked on the original Fantasia, loved the ostriches from the Dance of the Hour segment, and he thought of a sequel where one of the ostriches had a yo-yo. Most of the ideas did stay, but the ostriches were turned into flamingos in order to avoid familiarity with the predecessor and to make the segment more colorful. Goldberg got inspired by Mike Gabriel, who before the two of them were directed Pocahontas, and Gabriel would often play with his yo-yo during his breaks from working on the movie. For pomp and circumstance, Michael Eisner had just been to a graduation ceremony and called Roy about using the piece in the movie. As for what would be seen, he thought about the Disney princesses with their princes at a wedding carrying their future kids. But then Eisner dropped the story, but still wanted the piece to be used. They went through many different ideas for the segment until Francis Glebus came up with the idea of Noah having a difficult time getting all the animals into the ark. Donald Duck was added as Noah's assistant and Daisy was added too, where they would keep missing each other. Finally, for the Firebird Suite, Roy wanted to close the movie off with a piece that was the same emotionally equivalent to the original's Nine Ball Mountain and Ave Maria segments. He then decided to use the Firebird suite after it was licensed to Disney by Igor Stravinsky himself at the same time as The Rite of Spring. Roy got the idea of destruction when he went on a trip to Mount St. Helens after it erupted in 1980 and thought about the valley reviving itself over the years. From there, Paul and Gaetan Brizzi from Disney's Paris studio were brought in to direct it. When it was time to release the film, not only did it receive a new title from Fantasia Continued to Fantasia 2000, but they also decided to present the movie in IMAX, making it the first animated feature to be presented in IMAX. Similar to when Disney presented the original Fantasia with Fantasound during its roadshow experience. And now it's time for me to give my opinion on the film. In the end, I feel like Fantasia 2000 is a great sequel to the original with its use of different animation styles for each segment and stuff like that. I give it the highest rating of 5 gold stars. Well, that's it for Fantasia 2000 and the Fantasia movies. Hmm. Be sure to join me next week when I'll be reviewing The Wonderful World of Disney movie with Elijah Wood and Richard Dreyfuss. And if you enjoyed this video, then make sure to tell your friends about me, leave some questions in the comments below, subscribe, hit the like button, check out my card account links in the description below, and tell me how I can improve my videos.
Could I have my violin, please? Ah, thank you. All right, boys, let's... Oh, sorry. Could I have another stick thingy, please? Oh, and camera back on me. Camera back on me.